The Watchers Behind Glass. Margaret inherited the Victorian mirror, along with her grandmother's estate. Its ornate silver frame tarnished with age and neglect. The antique piece dominated the bedroom wall of her new apartment, its surface reflecting decades of forgotten moments. At first glance, it appeared unremarkable, just another relic from a bygone era. Its glass slightly warped with time's patient erosion. The first week passed without incident. Margaret adjusted to her reflections' subtle distortions, the way the old glass seemed to bend light at peculiar angles. She attributed the mirror's quirks to its age, dismissing the occasional shadow that lingered too long in her peripheral vision. The faces began appearing on a rain-soaked Thursday evening. Margaret stood brushing her teeth when movement caught her eye. Behind her reflection, barely visible in the mirror's depths, another face materialized, gaunt, hollow-eyed, watching with desperate intensity. She spun round, finding only empty space. When she turned back to the mirror, her own pale features stared back, trembling. Sleep became elusive. Each glance at the mirror revealed new horrors. A child's face pressed against the glass from within, mouth moving in silent screams. An elderly man with skin like parchment, reaching toward the surface with skeletal fingers. A woman whose eyes had been carved away, leaving dark, weeping sockets. Margaret covered the mirror with sheets, but the fabric seemed to ripple with movement beneath. She could feel their presence, pressing against the barrier between worlds, their need radiating through the glass like heat from a furnace. The apartment grew cold despite the heating, and shadows gathered in corners where no shadows should exist. Research consumed her days. In dusty library archives, she discovered the mirror's provenance crafted in 1847 by Cornelius Blackwood, a glassmaker obsessed with capturing souls. Blackwood believed mirrors were windows to the afterlife, and he had infused this particular piece with mercury and ground bone, creating what he called a soul trap. The historical records spoke of mysterious disappearances, of people who had owned the mirror and simply vanished, leaving behind only empty rooms and the lingering scent of grave earth. The faces grew bolder, appearing even when Margaret wasn't looking directly at the mirror. She glimpsed them in shop windows, in puddles, in any reflective surface. They followed her through her daily routine, their expressions shifting from pleading to demanding to threatening. Dark circles formed beneath her eyes as exhaustion consumed her, and her reflection began to look foreign, hollow, haunted, increasingly resembling the trapped souls that watched her every move. On the 10th night, Margaret understood what they wanted. She stood before the uncovered mirror as midnight approached, watching dozens of faces crowd the glass. Their mouths moved in unison, forming the same silent word over and over: freedom. They had been imprisoned for over a century, feeding on the life force of anyone who gazed into their prison. Each previous owner had been slowly drained, their essence absorbed into the mirror's hungry depths until nothing remained but another face behind the glass. But Margaret realized something the others hadn't. The mirror's power flowed both ways. As the faces pressed closer to the surface, their features becoming clearer and more desperate, Margaret placed her palm against the cold glass. The mirror's surface rippled like water, and she felt the pull of countless souls trying to drag her into their eternal prison. The temperature plummeted, and frost began forming around her fingers where they touched the glass. The faces smiled. Margaret smiled back and pushed. The mirror exploded outward in a cascade of silver fragments, each shard reflecting a different tortured face as they scattered across the floor. The apartment filled with the sound of rushing wind and distant screams as the trapped souls were finally released, not into freedom, but into the void they had been denied for so long. In the sudden silence that followed, Margaret stood among the glittering remains, her reflection fractured into 1,000 pieces. She had broken their prison, but in doing so, she had also shattered the barrier that kept them contained. Now they were free to roam, to seek new mirrors, new victims, new souls to join their eternal hunger. Margaret swept up the fragments carefully, each piece still holding a fragment of a face, a whisper of a scream. She would scatter them across the city, in antique shops and estate sales, ensuring the watchers would find new homes, new mirrors to inhabit. After all, some hungers can never truly be satisfied, only shared.